Hey everyone, it's Erica Stapleton with the 12 News I-Team, and I want to let you know about our series Cost of Crisis. This all started when a frustrated resident in the Perry Park area of Central Phoenix reached out to us with safety concerns in the neighborhood. It turns out, Perry Park has been a hot spot for Phoenix's growing unsheltered population and the many issues connected to that crisis. We spent 3 months regularly visiting the park and spoke to people staying at the park with nowhere else to go. Data backs up the need for help citywide, and this investigation takes a closer look at the city's response to homelessness and affordable housing, including the millions of dollars that are supposed to be budgeted to help. From the outside looking in, it might seem like a small point of pride.
Because we've been maintaining and keeping it clean.
But from the inside looking out,
It's all clean because he doesn't filter this.
Lorraine is doing all she can for the spot she's calling home.
I just put up the tarp to keep the shade in,
The tarp propped up by shopping carts, respite from the triple-digit temps this July morning, a haven of sorts in a hell she never imagined.
I've only been homeless a year.
When we met Lorraine in mid-July, she was staying on the street at Perry Park, near 32nd Street and Thomas Road, a reality for many lining the park that morning, like Lorraine's friend Robert J.
We just like family, brothers and sisters.
He was sharing the same tarp space.
There's days I wake up out here just sad. Am I going to be out here when I'm 60 or 70 years old?
Unlike Lorraine, Robert says he's been experiencing homelessness for years.
I'm only 46. Hey, I'm trying to make it through all the way.
The latest point-in-time survey from 2022 shows more than 9,000 people experiencing homelessness in Maricopa County, up by more than 2,400 since before the pandemic. Each number a different person with a different story.
It's a very sensitive issue.
I'm an addict.
When COVID hit, then my landlords decided not to renew my lease, so they put me on the streets.
Each story leading to this vulnerable chapter at Perry Park.
I nearly died out here.
My phone has been stolen 3 or 4 times.
By myself at night out here, I don't sleep because I always have to be watching my back. So during the day is when I get my rest.
In the past year, crime mapping shows cases of drugs, shootings, assaults, and vandalism. Safety concerns that impact the whole neighborhood.
And I see the fights, I hear the fights, we've heard the gunshots, we've had to shelter in the back of our house.
Morgan Saylor lives down the road from Perry Park.
We've seen people having sex up against the side of the building here, people passed out, people just sitting out here smoking meth or whatever they're smoking.
There was a time when she used to take her child to the playground.
Not the park that it was when I moved here.
And when she walks by now,
So you've got people that are mentally ill, people that are on drugs.
she feels helpless.
I can't fix that. I'm not qualified to. I don't want to bring my child here to play.
Her frustrations aren't without compassion. She's noticed a constant cycle of people who need help lining the fence over the past few years.
I don't want to give the impression that I am frustrated with the people here. I am frustrated with the city failing us.
Of the more than 9,000 people tallied to be experiencing homelessness in Maricopa County, more than 5,000 can't even get into a shelter. The majority of those unsheltered, nearly 3,100 people, are concentrated in Central Phoenix. Shelters are often full, including a new 200-bed space a few miles from Perry Park.
We're seeing the whole gamut from addiction to mental health issues to fixed incomes, people being priced out of the rental markets or housing market.
Scott Hall is with the City of Phoenix's Homeless Services Division, one of many city departments involved in addressing the homeless crisis.
We're seeing everything exacerbate the homeless issue within our city and within the country.
He says he's been out to Perry Park multiple times himself, trying to connect people in need to city resources, even if beds aren't always an option. The people there have said they feel like the city is failing when they see people camping out. How do you respond to that?
At the end of the day, we know we're failing people. If anybody's on that street, that's a failure.
Whenever Morgan has seen people moved from the park,
It gets cleaned up and then 2 days later or within a day, I'm sure by the time you see it next week, it could be completely different and filled up again.
the long-term solution? More housing. But in the short term,
I see an unsanctioned homeless camp.
a few minutes after we spoke with Robert and Lorraine, the city's Parks Department came through. They told us they were told to move. Lorraine's cleaning rendered pointless. As they start picking up, moving a few feet away, across the street,
It's all Robertson.
which keeps them technically off the park's property, but no less unsheltered.
And I guess at the end of the day, I'm angry at the city government because I feel like they're failing the residents here and they're failing the people in the park.
After initially seeing and hearing about the need for help at Perry Park, we asked Phoenix City Council member Carlos Garcia to tour it with us. He agreed and said the city should be doing more to help, but the big changes needed here aren't the ones that will happen overnight.
We used to come here a lot when my daughter was young.
Perry Park
I never felt uncomfortable.
hasn't felt like much of a park lately.
It was never like the nicest park in the world, but I felt safe.
Sure, you can see a playground and a pool,
We came here last week and my daughter was chasing a pigeon across the park.
but reality rivals recreation.
By the time I caught up with her, she was next to somebody who was smoking fentanyl with a machete right next to them, and my heart almost stopped.
A reality we've witnessed firsthand, visiting Perry Park ourselves near 32nd Street and Thomas Road more than a dozen times since the end of May. Signs at Perry Park, a public city park, detail what's not permitted on the property. A long list including no camping, no illegal drugs, no physical abuse, and no using shopping carts. Still, our cameras witnessed some of those things week after week.
And you're just like, wow, something needs to happen for this neighborhood because we have people who are out here suffering and they have no place to go.
Morgan Saylor and Chelsea Friday live down the road from Perry Park and are active in their neighborhood association. Their compassion for people experiencing homelessness also comes with a conflict.
All of the violence, all of the illegal activity that we see.
The 12 News I-Team pulled city data from 2019 through July 2022 and found that calls for Phoenix Fire to the block of Perry Park nearly doubled in the past 2 years. Phoenix police data showing a different trend, with a big spike of calls for service in 2020. The calls drop after that, but still average more than 1 call per week.
Today, I actually see a bunch of kids in the pool, which is really exciting to see.
In mid-June, we asked Phoenix City Council member Carlos Garcia to walk through the park with us to try and explain.
But you obviously still see a lot of people who are staying in the park, who may not have a place to live or maybe doing other things.
Despite numerous calls to police, the city can't arrest someone for being homeless.
We cannot criminalize homelessness and people that don't have a shelter.
And that's not what neighbors want. But the increased police and fire calls take a toll.
Because of the situation, we can't even have the bathrooms open. And so I'd love to see not only Perry Park, but every park in the city of Phoenix being used to its max potential.
The problem is that there's not enough shelter space for people who need it. And when people resort to parks,
It feels like the city isn't trying to even find real sustainable solutions.
what do you say to the parents who don't feel safe taking their kids to Perry Park?
If no one feels safe in a particular situation, that's a parent's job to gauge that.
Danielle Poveromo is a deputy Parks and Recreation director with the city of Phoenix.
See something, say something.
People are saying something, and it's not just about calling police or fire. If there's a concern regarding an encampment or homelessness, people in Phoenix are encouraged to report it to Phoenix Cares, a program that uses a variety of city services, including the Parks Department, to provide help, education, and cleanup. And since 2019, the 12 News I-Team found that the number of reports has skyrocketed. The city's records tallying more than 21,000 cases over the past 3.5 years, with number of cases in the first half of 2022 on pace to eclipse the full years before it.
We are there 7 days a week, monitoring, inspecting, cleaning our parks every day. So we address those situations as they come up and as we see them.
And like neighbors told us, the reports at Perry Park significantly increased during and after the pandemic. Morgan, who shared her phone records with us, called Phoenix Cares for help 3 times in the past year, plus other calls to other city departments, including parks and police.
Many, many different departments involved, and they just point fingers at each other. And as a busy resident, I have a full-time job, I'm a mom, Chelsea has 4 children, we could be on this merry-go-round for the rest of our lives.
City data through June 2022 shows all the calls to Perry Park have been resolved. But Morgan's point is that there's always another concern popping up.
It's heartbreaking and exhausting. We are trapped in this bureaucratic cycle we can't get out of.
Garcia's office and other city departments have tried to show they aren't ignoring Perry Park. There's programming like soccer, but it's seasonal. And in early July, the city opened up a skate park on an old tennis court, much to neighbors' excitement.
It's really getting to be wonderful. It had deteriorated a lot.
And at the end of July, Water Day, where I saw a few dozen people turn out. Councilmember Garcia also showed us a mural from another park activation event.
It's one of those where you're just kind of part of the group.
Activation events where neighbors are encouraged to come and use the park.
It is on all of us. I think it's important for neighbors to activate the park. I think when there's an empty public space and it's the only place where unsheltered people can be, they're gonna go there.
Both Chelsea and Morgan said they've brought their families to some of these activation events, but don't see a lot sticking after the events are over.
I can't look at the neighbors and tell them we're gonna fix it by tomorrow, and I also can't guarantee that's gonna be fixed for a year, because the problems that we end up seeing here are societal problems that are impacting everyone.
Next up, we start to take a closer look at the city's budget. And this time, we really narrowed in on COVID relief money, nearly $100 million the city has right now to use for affordable housing and homelessness. But we found out that only a small fraction has actually been spent.
You know, being out here, it's not worth it.
If you look throughout Phoenix, you can see the cost of a crisis.
I talked to some of the kids out here. They asked me, how long have you been out here? I said, I've been out here a long time.
Robert J. is 46 years old.
I said, you see these gray hairs? I didn't get these gray hairs for no reason. I've been out here since I was 15. Dropped out of high school and didn't really care much about nothing else. Got to doing drugs and drinking.
A path where he wants help.
The only place this is going to end up getting me into is into the graveyard.
Home right now is Perry Park, near 32nd Street and Thomas Road. A reality for many simply because there's nowhere else to go. What's the biggest challenge you face in your role?
Homelessness is unpredictable. You can't predict your inflow. You can do the best you can with the data you have.
Scott Hall is with the City of Phoenix's Homeless Services Division. Over the past 4 years, reports have soared to Phoenix Cares, a city helpline designed to respond to reports of encampments or those experiencing homelessness. And the top spots are all public places. Number 1, with the most calls, Burton Bar Library. The downtown encampment and intersection for the state's largest shelter, coming in at number 2. University Park is number 3. And Perry Park comes in at number 4, with Phoenix's City Hall coming in close behind at number 5.
We're very crystal clear on the need. The need is great.
The cost to fix it, not so clear, with funding funneling from several different sources, including local taxpayers, grants, and federal dollars. But the funds aren't always felt by people who need help.
It's a struggle, especially in the summertime.
Robert W. shared he'd been homeless since his landlords decided not to renew his lease during the pandemic.
No availability, so then my voucher expired.
He's been staying at Perry Park for the past year and says he'll often make the trip to the Human Services campus to try and get help with housing, but no luck.
I should have been housed already.
One of the city's biggest funding sources is the federal government, which has given Phoenix nearly $100 million in COVID relief money to address homelessness and affordable housing since 2021. But it turns out the city hasn't spent most of that money. Many of the projects weren't approved until June of this year. Even so, the city has only spent about $9 million, less than 10% of these federal funds. And the money has an expiration date. The funding can only be used through 2024.
All this money you try getting for us, where's this money going? Where's
Want us off the streets, but there's no beds. There's nothing there.
There's nothing there for us to go to.
And you think, oh, the city has millions of dollars for this. Why are people still on the streets?
It's not as easy as just you have a flat number and that's who you have to solve for, because you have a outflow number of people you're able to place and get housed and in treatment and in shelters connected with family, but you also have an inflow number.
In short, more and more people are becoming unsheltered, and despite the millions of dollars budgeted to help, the city can't keep up.
If everybody was to put their hand up and say, I want a shelter bed right now, the answer is no. But we do have a functional system where when we do get people who are willing, we can usually find them a shelter bed.
The state's largest shelter, Central Arizona Shelter Services, or CAS, is right in the heart of downtown Phoenix. It added more beds in June, bringing the total to 600, which are typically all full. The latest count at the end of August tallied more than 820 people living on the streets outside the shelter, an area that's come to be known as the Zone, Phoenix's largest homeless encampment. And in early August, residents and property owners sued the city over conditions in the Zone.
We're one of the fastest growing cities, and that's a good thing, but there's consequences that come with that. The housing market gets short. Right now, inflation is high. So ultimately, homelessness ends with someone being housed.
We're talking with Scott in a new shelter space near 28th Street in Washington. It has 200 beds, and there's even space for pets. But this shelter is perpetually full. Was the city of Phoenix prepared for that influx of people?
Prepared is probably a big term to use, but they were preparing for it. And we prepare for it by creating a robust rental assistance program. We've been adding shelter capacity over the last several years. We've increased our housing projects and our funding toward homelessness.
And some of this is only temporary. This particular shelter, which opened as a joint project with Maricopa County, is only in the budget through December 2024.
But that doesn't mean 200 beds are just going to go away like that. We'll evaluate and see how we can fund it, look for other fund sources.
In the meantime, Scott says the city is trying to online new shelter options and continue assistance programs.
And building housing isn't a quick process, and it's an expensive process. So when you hear these large amounts of money, sometimes it gets consumed up pretty quickly of building shelter projects and housing projects.
Long-term projects when people need help now. When do you think Phoenix will be at a point where there is enough affordable housing for everyone?
I can't answer that question. I hope soon.
So far, this is a small look at the city's spending on homelessness and affordable housing. The local budget is confusing, and we're working to break down exactly where taxpayer dollars are going. So stick with us as we continue digging through the data and add to our series, Cost of Crisis. In Phoenix, Erica Stapleton, 12 News.